All right, so if sex isn't for reproduction, isn't for communication or interpersonal awareness or any of these other functions that we explored in the previous lecture, what does Goldman think sex is for? And the answer is pretty simple for Goldman. Sex is for satisfying sexual desire. That's it. Maybe that in the course of satisfying that sexual desire, reproduction occurs. Maybe we have, as a result of that, a deeper interpersonal awareness, or we've communicated something of importance to our sexual partner. But that's not primarily what sex is for, according to Goldman. Sex is primarily for satisfying sexual desire. And Goldman claims that sexual desire is this desire that we have for physical contact with another human being's body. Okay, we have this impulse, we have this drive, this desire to touch and be touched by another human being, or to touch another human being bodily. And we recognize that it's a sensation that's different from other kinds of sensations that we have. And it's one that sex is able to satisfy. In fact, for Goldman, what he'd say is, if you know that you have a sexual desire, and you know that there's a potential for a sexual experience that will not satisfy that desire, you shouldn't engage in that sexual experience, because that sexual experience is for the purpose of satisfying that desire. And so that would be bad sex. But according to Goldman, if you have a sexual desire and you satisfy that desire by having sex, and that desire is satisfied, then that becomes, for Goldman, good sex, right? That's more valuable sex. So the worth of the sex is going to be determined by the ability of the sexual encounter to satisfy the sexual desire. And so this, of course, is what we might call a casual view of sex. It's a very non-traditional view of sex. We're thinking about sex here in a very pragmatic way, almost like a tool, a valueless tool that we use to satisfy this desire. And its value then is determined by its ability to accomplish its function. And what Goldman says is this, is that the pleasure intrinsic to sex acts is a good, but not, it seems to me, a good with much positive moral significance. So Goldman's approach to sex and ethics here is to say that the value of sex is in its ability to perform its proper function. And that doesn't necessarily entail any particular moral principles. In fact, what Goldman says is this, is there's no morality intrinsic to sex, although general moral rules apply to the treatment of others in sex acts as they apply to all human relations. Okay, what does that mean? It means this. What Goldman says is this. We can speak of a sexual ethic as we can speak of a business ethic, without implying that business in itself is either moral or immoral, or that special rules are required to judge big business practice which are not derived from rules that apply elsewhere as well. Sex is not in itself a moral category, although, like business, it invariably places us into relations with others in which moral rules apply. So for Goldman, sex is not special. Sex is not a uniquely valuable human experience. Sex is just one of the many things that we do that involves other people, like business arrangements. And so for Goldman, the ethical dimensions of sex are the ethical dimensions that would apply in any other relationship or interaction that we have with human beings. In business, in medicine, in teaching, there are certain moral obligations and prohibitions that exist. There are certain things that I can expect from you. There's certain things that I'm obliged to do for you, and there's certain things that I'm prohibited from doing from you. And what Goldman is saying is, yes, sex is kind of that same way. This is just another kind of interaction that human beings have with one another. It's nothing special, Goldman is saying.